Welcome back all after the lunch. Our next session in this room will be set up projects and onboard developers in minutes with Vortex by Alex. Please welcome Alex to the stage. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Second day. We made it. That's great. I'm going to talk about onboarding and the open source project that I'm maintaining called Vortex. I'm just going to give a couple of minutes for people to settle down. And I think we'll just start. A little bit about me. Alex Skrypnyk. I've been 15 years with Drupal. I do Drupal, I do DevOps, and I really like open source. Trying to advocate for it everywhere. You can use this QR code to view presentation on your phone, if you want, just to follow it on your laptop. Okay, let's dive into it. So what is onboarding? Just a term thrown in here and there in different contexts. In a context for project delivery, onboarding is the process of setting up project structure, environments, integrations, and familiarizing with the processes, tools, and workflows for smoothly to be able to smoothly contribute to the project. And different projects of different complexity have different requirements, and sometimes onboarding takes a very long time, and sometimes it's quite easy. So I'm going to talk more about it. So project setups are necessary, as you know, and then the effective onboarding ensures that developers can navigate the setup efficiently and start contributing without delays. There are some challenges with onboarding that I have witnessed while working on multiple projects within multiple organizations. One of them is the developers lose hours or days setting up the local environment, CI, and hosting environments, and needs to connect them, and that may take quite a lot of time. Another one is once you have set it all up, the setup could be inconsistent, meaning that you could have false positives. A false positive is, for example, when you have a CI pipeline that you expect to fail in test failures, but it doesn't. And what happens is you could have situations where you deploy things and go to release and thinking everything is working, but it actually doesn't. So because you're the thing that should have failed, it didn't. And you have to roll back, and it takes quite a lot of time to do that, and you have to restart things. So having some sort of defects in your pipeline and workflows can be quite challenging to resolve and identify. And then you also, when you do any kind of setup or integrations, you need to understand how the third parties work. So if you're setting up some sort of integration with a CI provider or hosting provider, you may need to know some details or configurations or things like that. And sometimes it leads to hours and hours of reading documentation and other things just to get to some sort of bottom of things. And so not always that smooth experience there. Sometimes there may be no onboarding documentation on the project at all. So you come into the project and there's nothing, and you'd be like, how do I even start it? So this kind of the challenges. And I'm gonna just list my personal ones. The cost of slow onboarding is there is a frustration and burnout. What that means is you've been asked for a project manager, how long it will take to set up and start going, and you'd be like, oh yeah, it's gonna take a couple of hours. 2 days later, you'd be like, oh, I'm only halfway through. And then 5 days later, you'd be like, oh, something is not working. And that has happened for 5 days. Yeah, that's a fact. So burnout as well. So you just have to spend those nights making the deadline to make it work. And So and if you don't spend those nights to in those cases, the project gets delayed, and now you may experience some issues with your projects, timelines, deadlines, and project managers will not be happy again. So yeah, and at the end of the day, it's all comes down to some sort of unplanned costs and budget overruns. So sometimes setup is like fixed to like 2-4 hours, but then, as I said, you may be spending quite a lot of time, and someone has to pay for it. If it's not you, then it's the company you're working for, and there's a budget limit for things. So yeah, that's something we'd like to avoid. I did speak to several people and developers, and it's kind of a list what people do like or appreciate. No one is unexpected firefighting, right? So we would like to come to our workplace and just work normal things, no firefighting, no unexpected things. Would be also nice to be familiar with project structure and tools. So between going between projects, it would be nice to have the same tooling, the same commands, the same good development experience to be the same or identical between projects, because you just know how to do it. You can just switch between projects quite fast, especially if you're a digital agency. In that environment, when things moving quite fast, you want to have that unified developer experience. Something to set up easy, as I mentioned. So just to get it set up and get the programming going. No fuss with connecting and doing DevOps and stuff. If there is a way to automate those setups, that'd be great as well. People did mention, when I spoke to several people, that say, yeah, it would be nice to have some sort of way to set up automatically, like automatically create a GitHub repo and configure all the labels and configure all the rules and configure all those things. Because, I mean, we all like, well, not all, some of us like to set up everything from scratch, but, sometimes it just gets too long, takes too long to set it all up. Yeah, and the kind of last thing is like, you may do everything correctly and even follow all the documentation, but things still not work. They may not work, and you would like to have a place to go to and talk to, a real support or some way to resolve things. With Drupal, we have, Drupal Slack, there is a Drupal.org, and you can do that. But when it comes to connecting things for your project setup, it may become problematic, because if you're doing like a CI setup or GitHub setup, for you to talk to someone, you need to have a support contract with GitHub to resolve issues. It just becomes quite a challenge, I would say. All right, meet Vortex. Vortex is a project template for Drupal designed to simplify onboarding and website maintenance. There is another QR code that just links to the project page. You're welcome to follow that, but I'm actually going to talk about this during the presentation. The name of this project, the project's been there for like 8 years now, on and off, because it's been progressing with the technologies that have been available. So the name Vortex just became from something that is a structured yet dynamic ecosystem, as you can see what it's written there, where Drupal acts as something in the core, and Vortex orchestrates everything around it. So, and the logo kind of described that as well there. So you can see Drupal at the core of it. Vortex provides 3 things. It's a template. I couldn't find the icon for template, so just a box. Documentation, and an installer or customizer, basically something that can take template and customize it for your project. I'm going to talk about each of these items now in more detail. So what's inside of Vortex? So the first thing is, most important for us Drupal developers, it's the Drupal project structure with the modules, themes, and test boilerplate. What that means is, once you installed it, you have a module boilerplate with tests connected and classes and everything. Those actually run in its own CI by Vortex, so once you've provisioned your project, they will be running your CI as well. If you don't like those boilerplate stuff, you can just simply remove those files, but you have them. So if you don't know how to write tests, you don't know where to start creating those test classes, we have it there in a template. Another one is there are pre-configured tools for quality checks and automated testing. So the code quality checks is like PHP CS, so code sniffer, PHP stand. There is a rector that helps to update things, PHP mess detector, and for automated testing, it's PHP unit and bhead. I'll speak more about that further in the presentation. Another one is there's a Docker-based environment for local development and cloud hosting. CI/CD setup for using GitHub Actions or Circle CI, so you can choose which one you would like to use for your project. There's a built-in support for Acquia and Lagoon hosting platforms. I'll speak about that later as well. And there is a project documentation. So your project will not be a project without documentation. So once you scaffold it from Vortex, your project will have some sort of documentation, and I'll show what kind of documentation later, that your developers or yourself later can refer to. Just dive into Drupal structure a little bit more. So the Drupal structure is based on the Drupal project, which has about 2,000 stars. So I took that and applied and enhanced with more items, and the idea is to keep it aligned. So Vortex keeps its own composer JSON aligned with Drupal project. So that's like reliance on the upstream. Configure a web root. So as you may know, Acquia likes or requires doc root as a name of web root. Everyone else likes or prefers web. So that allows to, there is a support for this configurable web root. And by the way, it's not just the directory that needs to change. There's some other links in files and scripts that require that support for web root to be configurable. Pre-configure settings with tests. So this is a cool part. I've actually saved this quite a lot. So you may know that there is a settings PHP file, and if you are working on a complex project, you may have configuration setting and settings PHP that depends on the environment where the project runs. So for example, you can have local, you can have CI, you can have staging, dev, or you can have production. There were cases, in my experience, where things were running incorrectly in different environments. So Vortex provides a unit test for your settings files that allows you to maintain and test that correct settings are applied for correct environments. Sorry, there's quite a lot of technical detail. I'm not going to go through it, but if you're interested, I can show that settings and setup maybe at the end of the presentation or after it. The next item on the list is, so there is a custom module and theme boilerplate. Again, this is just something that available there. If you don't like it, you can use your own modules and your own theme. And yeah, test boilerplate, I mentioned that as well before. As a part of Vortex, we also have the configuration for site admin modules, so environment indicator, shield, and stage file proxy. Some things that these modules is something that I've seen used almost on every site. So what that means by configuration for site modules is, for example, for environment indicator, there is a configuration for a color. Let's say you go to staging environment, you will see a yellow environment indicator. If you go to production, it's going to be red. So it's all been pre-set up, so you know that every time when you use the Vortex for your projects, they all look kind of the same visually. Things for shield and stage file proxy is same. You configure things and they just apply the same across the projects. There is also configuration for Search API Solr. So I haven't mentioned it yet, but there is Solr packaged with the Docker Compose. So just to allow to start if you want Solr. If you don't want it, you don't need to use it. But if you want Solar, there's already configuration available for that, so you can just start and use it. Same thing with Redis and ClamAV. By the way, Vladimir is not here, but we worked together on ClamAV for Drupal 11. So that made it on time for this presentation. That's great, because ClamAV is very widely used as a module, especially on government sites. People would like to have the scans for viruses on their sites. I mentioned the tools, so there's all these code quality tools and things for testing and Docker Stack. Sorry, I'm just going to speed up a little bit. The Docker-based environment is actually, it's a pure Docker Compose base. It's not DDEV or Lando, although DDEV and Lando are coming. So there will be a choice. You can choose which one you want to use. But the ones that are currently used are Lagoon images. If you don't know what Lagoon is, Amaze.io, they support open source Docker images that are production grade. What that means is whatever you use locally, you can use the same thing in CI and in production. So these are production grade images used actually by quite a lot of sites, including government sites. So very reliable, and Lagoon team does a really good job maintaining those. So as I mentioned, there is also Docker Compose configuration for Redis, Solar, and ClamAV. And there's also Chrome that allows to do the behat testing and visual testing there. Sorry. So because, as I mentioned, there are production-grade Docker images, whatever you have locally, the same thing you have in CI. And if you are using Lagoon, the same will be in production. That allows you, this is like to me personally, it's a big feature or important feature, because this allows you to avoid those situations where everything worked locally in CI and then broke in production because of mismatch of some sort of binaries, versions, and stuff. If you have those Docker images running locally and in production, you shouldn't have any problems because it's different. It's the same environment everywhere. I mentioned the DDEV next item on the roadmap, so it will be added. So CI/CD, assuming that you guys know what CI/CD is, so basically it's automation that allows you to run your automated tests somewhere in the cloud. And GitHub Actions is the one provided by GitHub, and Circle CI is another one. By the way, Circle CI I think has been around for like 10 years, and it was quite powerful CI provider before Microsoft bought GitHub, and then they invested a lot of GitHub and built GitHub Actions, which is quite powerful now as well. So 2 identical configurations are provided, and you can just choose which one you want. There are different reasons why you would want one another. I'm not going to go through them, but I'm just saying that's 2 available. This is a kind of a big or important feature as well. So there is a cache database between builds. So what happens is in CI, there is a job that goes and downloads a database in order to then import it into your site that's been provisioned inside of CI as well, so that you can run your tests, behat tests, or if you use Drupal test traits, you actually need a real site running. On customers' projects, the database becomes quite large with time, right? So if you have a team of 2 or 3 people constantly building things and pushing to CI will be pulling database from production or whatever. And it will take quite a lot of time to actually, and resources to pull it all the time. So to avoid all of that, there is a CI job that runs overnight and just does a pull of the database and caches it for the very first build. So all the next build on the day just using that cache database. And as I said, it's quite powerful because you save a lot of time on CI builds by that, and you want your CI builds to be fast. The CI is pre-configured for Git flow. What that means is there's like different rules in how and what triggers the builds. Git flow is the way, I'm not sure if, again, I'm going to just assume that we all know what Git flow is, as in it's just a way of releasing software. You have your master or main branch, and you have develop, and then you have versions and tags. So there is this CI/CD pipeline is pre-configured to support those. Yeah, and then once the CI runs the tests may produce screenshots or test results or different artifacts. So there is a storage for that available. So what that means is you could, after a build passes or fails, you can always go to the CI UI and press a couple of buttons and actually see what your CI build produced. So if you need to debug, you can download those or browse for them online, through the UI just to see what the test result is. Or, for example, if there was a fail in a Behat test with screenshots produced on fail, you can look at those and debug your test in this way. Yeah, and there's another kind of small feature. If you're in a rush or if you want to ignore some of the checks in CI, for example, you don't want to comply with PHP stand for today, for example. You don't have to change any code. You can just plant a variable through UI of GitHub or Circle CI, and that will ignore that check. And there's like there's all those tools that I mentioned. They have the checks in CI, so you can use the variables to bypass them. The variables are documented. There is a documentation section I'm going to talk about, so you would actually know what kind of variables to put and how to put it. I'm going to speed up a little bit. So there's integration with hosting providers, Acquia and Lagoon. And with Acquia, there's a way to identify the environments because every hosting provider actually have their own way of identifying which environment your site runs, production, stage, test, preview environment. So Vortex provides the environment type identification logic. So you kind of always know what it is, and it just comes out of the box. There are cloud hooks. If you don't know what cloud hooks, it's basically Acquia's way to run something after you deploy code or copy database. So this is provided there in Vortex, and it's all consistent so that when you deploy to Acquia, it actually runs the same database import and updb and config imports, any other provision scripts that needed. And also this code artifact packaging. Some of you may know that Acquia does not support direct repositories, so you can't actually, I mean, you can develop and then push to Acquia, but you have to have everything compiled. That's not how we usually do things. We usually have a source repository like a GitHub or GitLab, and then we push to Acquia. And for that, you need to assemble a code artifact, and you need to package it, and you need to send it. So there is a separate package I maintain there is a separate package called Git artifact that I maintain that is included in Vortex that allows to do that. With Lagoon, similar environment type identification, deployment after CI passes, and remove an environment. So if your PR closes and you in Lagoon and you have a preview environment for that PR, that gets closed automatically. There is a documentation. So there is this documentation available. What this documentation is, this is not for your project. This is for Vortex itself. And the idea here is that if you're a developer working on a project started from Vortex, you can always go to this documentation and check for things like how the tools work, how CI is set up, how the hosting. So this is like generic information. And if you are a tech lead or if you're a tech lead, you can just point your team, when they ask questions, to this documentation. So you don't have to repeat yourself, or you don't have to actually document this whole stuff, your whole stack setup within your own Confluence. You don't need to do that. It's already documented here. And we also provide a documentation scaffold for your project. So this documentation is actually, there is like a README. So every project you start will have this nice README set up, and with local environment setup, it's actually cut out at the bottom. There's more steps and more things. So your project will be documented. And there are other project-specific documentation files that you can modify if you want to provide more information. So like this documentation structure provided as well. So you can just provide that and have your project documented. And there is also onboarding checklist. So if you do have an existing project and you want to put it on Vortex, there is a checklist provided for you as a convenience, so you would know how to you can track actually the progress of onboarding to Vortex. Automation. So we have a dependency updates with renovates. It's actually quite powerful, and interestingly, the Vortex itself uses all this CI pipelines and automated updates itself. So what Vortex uses is what you would get in your projects. And the Renovate is an automated bot that has a configuration to update your dependencies like Composer packages and GitHub Actions and JavaScript packages, container images. So what I'm saying is like Renovate updates Vortex itself. So Vortex is up to date all the time. So you can anytime you download from or install a new project, you always get the latest and greatest Docker images, PHP packages, etc. Yeah, and by the way, so if you do want to use Renovate in your project, and I think everyone should, because we all want to be secured and updated. So this is how it will look like for you. You would have a dependency dashboard issue created in your GitHub, and you will get the pull requests like this with a nice table. So Renovate creates all this for you. And just updates, and if you do have all the tests, so basically you can think about it every morning you come up and there's a PR waiting with all the tests passed. All you have to do is press the button, automatically things gets patched. You can go one more step further, and you can even you can convert CI into CD, so do continuous delivery where these things are automatically deployed to production. I'll stop here with this. There's also a couple of more small things where auto-assign PR author for the PRs in GitHub. Sometimes people forget to assign themselves to PRs, so there's a action for that, and there's a conflict label just to add the label that the pull request is now conflicted. All right. I'm running out of time a little bit here, but I just want to say that if you do use Vortex for your projects, you have the solid base. The projects started from Vortex are upgradable. What that means is if Vortex received an update, for example, if there is a new Docker images received or something else or some bug fixed, you can rerun the installer, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and things will get upgraded automatically for you. So this is a little bit different from how starter kit usually work, because usually starter kit is just once-off thing. You run the starter kit, it creates or scaffolds your project, and then you cannot rerun it again. I mean, you would have to run the starter kit again from scratch and redo the whole thing. The installer provided here can discover things that's been installed previously and adjust itself automatically, and just to provide those new things or new differences, but preserving what you already have on your project. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm coming across very clear on this, but I can show it later. So Vortex itself is tested in different scenarios. There's like 20 pipelines in itself, and it tests different scenarios. I'll give an example is, for example, that the Docker Compose app works with all the images, and when you started that, you actually run tests, and the tests actually pass. And if you have a failing test, that the failing test gets captured, and the failure is captured and things are failing. So all of these permutations, so there is no false positives and no false negatives. That's why it took so long to develop all of this since 2017, because I've been adding more and more checks into things, and the checks did pick up issues. Sometimes a Docker image may have invalid. I remember there was a case where there was an update with curl. I think we talked with someone yesterday about it. Docker image was released, and there was now no way of knowing it was not okay. But my test actually ran. They just did quite a lot of things, and test started to fail. And it appeared that the curl did something interesting. I had to go back to Toby from Amazing and ask him nicely to fix it. That was great, because things are. I'd rather catch these issues here than in some other place in actual production project. Use the installer. You can use the installer. I'm gonna just go. So installer uses this nice ASCII art and provides this questions, and it can be extendable. So the idea is that whatever things are there right now. In Vortex, you can choose using the installer, but the installer will be extended more to provide more services and more things to choose from, which is, I think, really good. So more integrations coming, and really like to ask you guys to check it out and provide feedback in any way. Contact me. I'm always available on Drupal Slack channel, and there is actually a Slack channel for Vortex. So please write something there. If you want to participate, I would love to see you there in projects. I can show you very quickly how the installation works. So the installation I talked about, right? If you want to make can you guys see it? So you can. I'm just using default values. But you can adjust it for you, and you can make choices. I'm not sure if you can see. I'm actually going to increase that. You can choose profile things. This is what I was saying, like clam AV. You can choose what you want. If you don't want Redis, you can, not choose it, and then whatever's been produced for your project will not have Redis or will not have Solar. You can choose a hosting provider, deployment types, how things provisioned, and what kind of continuous integration things run. So after you make all these choices, you have the summary, and then things are downloaded, and a project structure is created, which as I'm about to finish this, and you have a project structure which is actually looks like. Did I lose my thing? Which looks like basically like that. So you have your web, you have your test scripts, you have your recipes if you want them, you have some other files there. So the next, as this one says, the next steps. I think I removed it. There was the next steps where you just Ahoy build. This actually uses Ahoy for as a command wrapper. You do Ahoy build, and you have your project running. I don't have time to demonstrate, but it would be something like that. And this should just start building things. So I've just created this project from scratch. So it took Vortex, created, and so things started to build. I think I have to stop here. This build is going to take maybe 3-4 minutes, and which I don't have. But thank you. Please ask me any questions. I'm available the whole day here for the rest of the day. Thank you.